This is Polyamory Weekly for August 16th, 2005. Coming up on this week's show, mail, and more mail, just the way I like it. A message for the perverts, a call for smut, and an upcoming interview. Hello, and welcome to Polyamory Weekly for August 16th, 2005. For our under 18 listeners, this is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, visit scarletteen.com. Okay, for the rest of our listeners, this is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view, and I am your host, the very cunning Minx. Got a light show for you guys today as I'm preparing to go off to Ohio Leather Fest with Grey Dancer. Kind of excited about that. The speaker roster there is really incredible, and I'm more than a little intimidated about the people I'm going to be able to meet. But it should be really fun, and I will of course report back and let everybody know how everything went. So let's dive right into the very full mailbag this week. First of all, heard from Oh My Goddess, and she wrote in and said, Minx, I heard your broadcast. It's actually a narrowcast. By the way, this is the new term out there. The broadcast is, intended, it goes out to everybody broadly, and this is a narrowcast. You actually have to, download the program to find it, to listen to it, and it only goes out to under 1,000 listeners. Anyway, that's me being a little bit of a geek. I heard your broadcast a couple of weeks ago, and you mentioned Poly Matchmaker. I just wanted your listeners to know there's another site called Poly Plaza at www.polyplaza.net. That's POLYPLAZA.net. Poly Plaza also has an extensive list of different forums to choose from. Email, private messaging, photo galleries, and chat in a much more relaxed venue than Poly Matchmaker in IMHO, she writes, in my humble opinion. It's still in its infancy, but I'm sure the more who check out the site, the merrier it will become. I love the show and keep up the good work. So thanks very much, Oh My Goddess, for writing in. I'm always happy to share resources with the poly community, and you're absolutely right. A friend of mine had expressed concern that we did a little search for Chicago, the city that I lived in, and I was trying to find single poly men, which are just really not that common. And I think it only turned up 6, and some of them I know are not. 2 of them I'm like, oh, I know that guy, and they're in relationships, so I must have done the search wrong. But I think Poly Matchmaker is a great site, and polyplaza.net, if anybody wants to go, check that out. If you do, give me a jingle. Drop me a line, 206-600-5677. Let me know what you think of the site. Next email is from LB. LB writes in, says, Greetings, Minx. I'm so glad that I have the chance to write to you. I spent most of the last weekend at work catching up on all the Poly Weekly that I had time to catch up on. So as you can guess, I have millions of ideas rushing around in my mind. Millions of things I would love to comment on. Don't worry, they're all positive. Your show has helped open my eyes that there is definitely light after hurt in poly relationships. Ooh. My wife and I are new to the poly lifestyle and have been with one other couple, and we're currently in one of the rocky areas. And I'll insert here, LB, so sorry to hear that, but be honest, be fair, be real. Your Minxisms and experiences have helped me with putting a lot of things into perspective in my mind, so I know how I want to approach the situation. Some other things I've loved in your show is being able to see how you and Grey Dancer interact. It's a professional, yet loving, free, entertaining, and informative format, no matter what your topic is. I thought for a second there, LB, you were going to say that, the way we interact is entertaining, and I was like, why don't you sit in on some of our arguments and see if you still think it's really entertaining? Maybe it is if you're not involved in them. Some of them, I swear, we should sell ringside seats to. It's really ugly if you're me having to deal with the argument, but I wonder if other people watching that aren't emotionally involved would find it entertaining. I don't know. He continues, I have learned more than I ever thought I would about shibari. And I'll insert, I keep interrupting your letter, I'm so sorry, but I'll insert a plug here for, of course, for Grey Dancers Podcast. Rope Weekly, available at www.greydancer.com/Rope Weekly. And you do spell Grey, by the way, Gray. No, we're not pretentious enough to do the British spelling. He continues, I myself am not interested in the shibari scene, nor am I really interested in the whole BDSM situation, although my girlfriend does appreciate having her ass reddened every now and then. And by the way, LB, if you want to send a picture of your girlfriend's reddened ass, I would not be offended. He continues, please, please, please keep up the wonderful work. Since finding your podcast, I am hooked. And he signs it, one of your perv listeners who knows it is all about the sex. And I have to add here his signature line is, the truth is Pavlov's dog trained Pavlov to ring a bell just before he started to salivate. Made me go, Give you a little food for thought there. Thanks very much, Justin, for writing in. It is encouraging, and sometimes I feel like I'm really just spending all my time stroking the minx on the show and not actually sharing any useful information. But it is important for me, too, because, hey, the minx needs maintenance as well. And I know once on the show I talk about communication styles and arguments and things like that. But the truth is, I mean, we all know that it's really hard to be in a poly relationship, and it's really hard to be in the midst of an argument, as I am right now. And so, things like this, the encouragement, it's always very nice to hear. I will never discourage people from sharing. And the next letter is actually one that I meant to read last week, and I forgot because it is in my regular email box with my real name and everything. And the reason is because it is from one of my oldest and dearest friends, whom I will call, he didn't tell me how to refer to him, so I'll call him, I want to call him Lance, and he will know what that means. It's his bar name, basically. By the way, have you guys ever had a bar name? I mean, I know a lot of people have scene names, but when he and I went on vacation together once, he actually had business or personal cards printed up with his fake bar name, which was Lance with a Z, and mine was Vivienne, spelled, the French way. It was Vivienne Sands. And what's really funny, though, is he kept forgetting to call me Viv. He kept calling me by my real name, which is really funny. Anyway, he's been a dear friend of mine since the 6th grade, and he wrote in and said, hey there, now that they have podcasts on iTunes, I finally downloaded your podcast, and I'm a subscriber. I listened to most of your last show and loved it. You are a fabulous host, very smooth, natural, and professional. You're ready for prime time, baby. Congratulations on that project. I am very, very impressed. And he continues with some personal information that I won't share on the air. But I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Lance. That meant a lot to me. Lance has been an avid, since he came out to me, I believe it was the summer of after my sophomore year in college, and he came out to me as gay, and at the time, I was I lived in Texas. I was a Bible-thumping Christian and really thought that I was supposed to believe that it was evil for him to be gay. And since then, we've both come a very long way, obviously, and he has been a gay rights and a sexual health advocate for many, many years, devoting much of his time and energy to educating the public and to trying to garner political change. And this praise coming from him, at least for me anyway, is very high praise indeed. So thanks very much, Lance, and we will go on vacation again soon. South Beach, here we come. Okay. Next letter in the mailbag is from Tisiphone, hope I'm pronouncing that right, who writes, Dear Minx, firstly, may I congratulate you on putting together an awesome show. Awesome, dude. That was my insertion. Since I stumbled upon your podcast in iTunes, I've become an avid listener. I don't necessarily identify yet as a polyamorist, but value your views, experiences, and above all, approach to your life choices. If only everyone were as thoughtful, deliberate, and caring as you and your family are. Don't worry, you're not too high up on that pedestal. I'm sure it's been a lot of work to get there and stay there. And I'm really glad, Tisiphone, that you put that insertion. Otherwise, I would have to come up with a list right now of all the reasons that I am not always thoughtful, deliberate, and caring. I try to end up that way, but I don't always start out that way. Anyway, he continues, if I had to identify in any community right now, I would have to say it's the community of the open-minded. I decided some time ago that the conventional structure of relationships, i.e. sexual relationships as opposed to friend or familial relationships, is not to my liking, and while I don't judge anyone for their choices, I hope that they will offer me the same understanding as I try to forge and define the relationship with my partner that works for us and our lives. It's extremely challenging, but I hope and trust that it will all be worth it. So Minx, the purpose of my email, really, it's to give you many strokes for a fantabulous podcast. It's also to say thank you for such a responsible and enlightening weekly window of sharing. I think we can call it that, the weekly window of sharing. Although I'm not an active member of your community, I thank you for allowing me to participate in this way to add another perspective in my own quest to define my relationships with the people that I love. Love the new music and keep up the marvelous work. And by the way, once again, that music is Good Suspicion by the band Pacemaker Jane out of Ohio, available at www.pacemakerjane.com. And the part from, and of course, thank you, Tisiphone, for all the nice things that you said. But one thing really struck with me that I know I've said before, but I just wanted to say again, the second paragraph where you talk about people offering you the same understanding as you try to forge and define the relationship with your partner that works for you and for your lives. And I know we've talked about it, but it just brings to mind the first 6 months / a year of our poly relationship when Great Answer and I didn't really have any poly resources. I mean, I'm sure there were things available on the internet, but it was so personal to us that I don't know if it didn't occur to us or just we were so busy trying to talk everything out that we didn't really have other places to look. We didn't have other people we could talk to. We didn't have other people saying, oh, my relationship is like this, or my relationship is this way. We didn't have what I call, for lack of a better word, the paradigms. And I remember I kept a journal, and one of the reasons I did and still do is to remind myself of what it's like to be in that very scary place. And we're pretty stable right now, but we didn't start out that way. And I remember how hard it was to shake. I didn't realize how deeply ingrained the traditional paradigm of a sexual relationship and a dating relationship and marriage were within me. And I have always been fairly non-traditional. Even as a monogamous person, I didn't really want marriage. I didn't really believe in marriage for myself because I felt it was, there were too many role models, sort of gender roles that I was afraid of falling into. Now, I know people can be married and not fall into those gender roles, but I didn't feel that I could. And I had seen it happen with too many of my friends that changed once they got married, and they fell into these gender roles and social roles that I just didn't want to do. At any rate, and again, this is of course nothing against our married friends. This is something that I saw and said, hey, I have a choice. I don't want to do that for myself. But it wasn't until I really started dating Great Answer that I realized how deeply ingrained that dating and marriage paradigm was, even though I didn't believe in it. Because one of the questions that I was constantly asking was, well, where is this going? Where is this heading? If I can't, in my head, put it down, down this road of, dating to meaningful relationship to marriage, where does it go? And it was really ridiculous that I was doing that because I didn't want marriage. I'm not even able to have kids, and I never really wanted them if I did, if I were able to have kids. And besides that, Great Answer has plenty of kids for the both of us. So, but it was very difficult for me because I had to question. I had to first realize that I had this paradigm sort of ingrained in me, and then I had to rip it out of my sort of subconscious, my, what do you call it? What did Freud call that? The collective unconscious, sort of this thing that is ingrained in me because of the society I live in without my realizing it. And then I had to go and question it and find something to replace it with. And I remember for the first 6 months or a year of our relationship, I kept walking around saying, the problem is that I don't have a box to put this in. I don't have a box to say, here's what this relationship is. And it was very challenging because for all we talk about labels, and labels being stereotypical and inaccurate, there's a reason that we as a society come up with labels, because, being a primary, secondary, polyamorous, monogamous, responsible non-monogamy, I just did not know what any of those things meant. I didn't know who I was, and it was so much questioning to come up with, something in my head, a paradigm, whether it remained labeled or unlabeled, that I was comfortable with. Okay, end my rant with regards to Tisophone's email. Thanks very much for writing in and for sharing anything we can do to help. And by the way, I do want to extend a welcome out there to our of course, not everybody who listens to the show is poly, and not everyone who listens to the show is into BDSM. Hey, let's celebrate our differences. I want to extend a special welcome to any new iTunes listeners we have, any monogamous listeners out there trying to get some insight, and the unspecified, like Tisophone, who doesn't really have a label yet. Everyone's welcome here. We'll try to be as respectful as we can while still ranting freely. Okay, next up, and by the way, again, thanks to everybody for giving me so much food for thought. Your emails are very, very insightful and very personal, I might add, and they always give thought, and that's why I like to share them on the air, not just because the minx likes her strokes, of course, but also because I do find them very thought-provoking and think that, hey, maybe they will resonate with other listeners as they did with me. By the way, email address, if you want to reach me, cunningminx, CUNNINGMINX @gmail.com. Or if anyone ever wants to pick up a phone, the listener comment line is area code 206-600-5677. And that is basically just a voicemail line where you can leave a message. And if you do, I'd be happy to play it on the air, unless, of course, you tell me not to. Next letter is from Jason, and I'm going to skip all the strokes. Let's assume that he gave strokes. And he says, on another note, I wanted to share a couple of things that help me keep perspective when it comes to angry arguments. And listeners, I will insert here, yep, this email is about the fighting. He continues, my brother recently lost his wife to heart disease, and I've been out there for him as he talks things out during his grieving. One thing he said that made me want to shout, yes, that's it, was when he was saying how it was always comforting to him that even during their worst discussions, he always knew that the relationship itself was okay. Neither of them ever stormed out of the house, and they both made sure to let the other know that nothing bad was going to happen because of the argument. And I will insert here, Jason, that this is something that is very hard learned for me, and I still don't think I do it very well. For me, when there is a very serious fight, and when I personally, in my brain, I can't see what is the outcome. If I can't visualize what the resolution is going to be, I get pretty hopeless. I get in a place where I think, oh my gosh, am I going to have to break up? Is this going to be the end? And Great Answer has been really patient and has done a pretty good job of training me over the years, I think, to understand that even if you can't see the resolution, even if we don't know how this is going to end exactly, not to question whether the relationship will still be there, because if every single fight, I mean, of course, in the beginning it's different. In the first, 6 months or a year, yeah, you are going to be questioning the nature of the relationship. But after 3+ years, I really need to stop questioning the nature of the relationship and to understand and give him comfort that I understand that this is just a fight. This is an argument. And just because I'm not questioning the nature of the relationship doesn't mean it's not serious. I think in my own mind that if I'm not doing that questioning, which is very mean, because to him it can come across as threatening to break up, which is really not a fair way to fight at all, guys. That somehow to me it means that this isn't a real fight. That I'm not being, and my concerns aren't being taken seriously if I'm not questioning the nature of the relationship. And I'm trying to get past that. And so thank you, Jason, very much for saying that. And I'm going to read that line again. It was always comforting to him that even during their worst fights, discussions, he always knew that the relationship itself was okay. Very important to say. So, Jason continues in his letter. This got me remembering something that happened in my life almost 30 years ago. I was about 7 years old and had just learned my first vastly oversimplified definition of divorce. I knew that divorce was when two people were so mad at each other that they left the marriage. Like I said, oversimplified. So, one night when my parents were having a row about something or other, I could hear the raised voices. I panicked and knocked on their door. When they asked me what was wrong, I was terribly upset and asked if they were going to get divorced. Needless to say, they were both completely flabbergasted and, as an added bonus, were shocked right out of their fight. And he adds, lest ye think badly of them, let me say they never argued in front of the kids and tried not to when we could hear. Unfortunately, many of the places we lived had very thin walls. After the divorce incident, they were always good about letting us know when they were arguing and that it didn't mean anyone was leaving. They were just working something out. And I will insert here, Jason, again, that is so important to say that when we're arguing, even if I'm very often afraid of the future of the relationship. But I think it's really important, and I don't think I do a good enough job of this, of doing that. I mean, I think it's great that parents do it with the kids. I think we need to do this as adults for each other. I think we need to let the other partner know that when we're arguing, even though we're mad, even though we don't know what the resolution is, even though we just want to spit fire right now, that it doesn't mean that anyone is leaving and that we are just working something out. And I apologize if you guys can hear that in the background. They're doing yard work. So if you hear rumbling in the background, it's because they're out in front mowing the lawn or something like that. And Jason ends with, anyway, thanks for letting me ramble. As a final note, I'd like to give my idea for a new tagline. What do you guys think? How many licks does it take to get to the center of polyamory? Oh, Jason, thank you so much. I really like that tagline. How many licks does it take to get to the center of polyamory? Woohoo! And our next letter, also from Jason, who wrote about, if you guys remember, I believe it was Tacit's rant last week regarding luck. And Jason wrote in and said, Hi, Minx. Just listened to show number 21 and wanted to say something about luck. I'm an IT administrator and recently left corporate life to take over the computers at my county public library. I love playing with technology and I love libraries, books, and reading. I get to wear whatever I want, and so long as people can get their email, I get to spend my day however I choose. I tell this to people and they say, Wow, you're so lucky. They look at my relationship with my wife, who I've been married to for 13 years now. She's a magnificent woman, beautiful, intelligent, funny, sensual, everything I could possibly want. People say to me, Wow, you sure are lucky. At the age of 36, we've managed to be completely out of unsecured debt, and the only loan we're carrying is on my wife's new car. Although I took a big pay cut to work for the library, our financial state and my wife's consulting income mean that we have plenty of money to meet expenses and buy the occasional fun thing or take trips. People say to me, Wow, you sure are lucky. And now, at last, the point. I get a little offended when people tell me how lucky I am. It feels like they have completely ignored all the years of hard work that's gone into getting me where I am. I busted my hump to constantly improve my job skills. I learned from all my relationships that didn't last and from all the disagreements my wife and I have had over the years. And I'll insert, boy, you sure do learn a lot from those arguments and disagreements, don't you? He continues, I made a conscious choice to make my personal values and beliefs more important than how big my paycheck was, and waited for the right moment to make a career move, etc. and ad grade infinitum. So far as I can tell, the only thing luck, God, goddess, universe, fate, whatever, will do is to put you in the path of opportunities. It takes a lot of work to recognize those opportunities, and it often takes courage and faith to pursue them. Also, unless you're constantly working to educate yourself in the areas that are important to you, whether it be work skills, communication skills, relationship skills, or anything else you desire, then those opportunities either won't come along or you won't be equipped to take advantage. I do believe that luck can play a part in good things coming to you, but unless you seize the opportunity and are willing to work hard to make it successful, all of the luck in the world won't help. enough ranting. I leave you with a semi-related thought that has always tickled me. Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. And that's the end of his letter. But Jason, thanks. I think this is an excellent topic that doesn't relate just to polyamory either. And I want to reread the sentence that really, really resonated with me. So far as I can tell, the only thing luck will do is put you in the path of opportunities. It takes a lot of work to recognize those opportunities, and it often takes courage and faith to pursue them. Amen to that. And I do want to comment on the fact that, first of all, I think people say you're so lucky. I think it's sort of an expression in our language, kind of like, how's it going, when you expect the answer fine. It's not really terribly meaningful. Or very often, people will tell me a problem or an issue that they're having, and I say, I'm sorry. And the response is, oh, well, it's not your fault. And I think, well, of course it's not my fault. So I've trained myself to say, I'm sorry to hear that, or I'm sorry that happened to you, or I'm sorry that you're going through this. And I think that you're so lucky is sort of one of those non-meaningful expressions that maybe we should start replacing with things like, wow, I'm so happy for you, or wow, what a great life, or wow, that's wonderful, or wow, how did you manage to do that? Something along those lines, if I may make those suggestions. But that being said, it actually brought to mind a situation recently where I posted in my private journal about a job opportunity that I have, where I was offered a job at a company that I've worked for part-time just over the summers for the last 3 years, and they have recently offered me a job in which I would work 25 hours a week, and they would give me health insurance, and I would have a flexible schedule. And I don't think many people responded with the wow, you're so lucky. I think maybe one person did, and this is by no means a slam on whoever that person was. But I do often get the responses, wow, you're so lucky. I wish I could have, a job where I only work 25 hours a week and got health insurance, and they were flexible with the schedule. And so I thought about it, and I thought, let's look back at the events that led up to this particular opportunity. And first of all, I was assigned this as a temp job. So the first thing that I did was I went into a temp agency. I took all those tests. I scored really highly on word type. I can type really fast. I type like 80 words a minute. So, there's the fact that I, went in and did all of that. And then I went in, I worked 10 hours a week for them one summer. And I was honest about my schedule. If I couldn't come in, I told them. I tried to make up the time. And then at the end of the assignment, one of the things that I always do is I left my business card, and I also wrote a personalized thank you note, which is on my stationery, so that includes a photo of myself along with my address and phone number and email address. And that's just something that I do after every assignment. And so a year later, the company contacted me directly, and they said, we'd like to hire you directly, not through the temp agency. So I said, okay, let me check and see if that's possible. So I called the temp agency and said, hey, got a client of yours that wants to book me directly. What are your rules regarding this? And they said, well, if it's been more than 6 months, you can work for them directly. Obviously, we don't like it if you do, but yes, you can work for them directly. And I said, great. So I called the company back and said, it's been more than 6 months, so yes, I can work for you directly. However, I will ask that if I ever can't make it and you call in a temp, if you could use the temp agency that you used before. And she said, of course, we're very happy with that temp agency. They send really good people over. We just prefer to work with somebody who already knows our systems and already understands the way things work. So I worked for them that summer, and then that fall, actually, they called me and offered me a job in their marketing department, or customer service, I think it was, working 30 hours a week. And I thought about it very much. I asked a lot about the job. They didn't offer me health insurance at that time, but they said, and I turned that job down. I didn't feel that I could work 30 hours a week and still have enough time. I didn't think 10 hours a week was enough to run my own business, along with all the travel restrictions that I have, because when I work, I do my consulting and shows. I tend to travel a lot. And I didn't really feel that I could give them the commitment of 30 hours a week that they wanted. So that's exactly what I told them. I said I'd love to, but I didn't feel I could commit that kind of time at the time. And I told them that health insurance was also a big deal for me. And so they called me back again this summer, and I'm working more hours this summer. I think it's closer to 15 instead of 10. Sometimes it's as much as 20. And they sat me down last week and said, you've probably noticed that the company is really growing. We are hiring new people. I even had recommended, they were hiring a certain assistant. I had even recommended some friends of mine that have the kind of background that they wanted for that assistant position. And they sat me down and said, okay, here's the thing. We really want to work with you. We like that you know the business, that you know us. You're very conscientious. And, we want to offer you this position year round, 25 hours a week, if you could commit to that, and health insurance. Now, for those of you that don't already know, I have a chronic condition, rheumatoid arthritis, I've had since I was 14. And thanks to George Bush's America, I've never been able to get, in my career as of the last however many years, I've never been able to have affordable health insurance as a self-employed person with a pre-existing condition. As you may know, it is impossible in this country for a self-employed person with a pre-existing condition to have affordable health insurance that covers that pre-existing condition. So, they offered me the position, and we talked about it. I mentioned my concerns, and actually this week I decided to take it. But if you look at all the events leading up to that, you see that there were things that I did along the way, things that I did without any expectation of a job offer, without any expectation of anything, simply because those are the skills that I have and the way I choose to live my life. And of course, this is an opportunity that was thrown in my path, and to an extent that was luck. But when you look at all the things that led up to it, it has to do with the way I choose to live my life, the skills that I have, and the values that I live my life by, even including things like honest communication with the temp agency that led to this particular opportunity being presented, and even the honesty with my going back and forth over the kind of hours I can work, with my deciding to, in the end, take this position. So, while I do believe, I agree wholeheartedly with what Jason says, and I agree too with the point where he says that, unless you are constantly working to educate yourself in the area that is important to you, work skills, communication skills, relationship skills, or whatever else is important to you, then either the opportunities won't come along, or you won't recognize them when they do, or you won't be equipped to take advantage of them when they do. So, true words, never spoken. Moving on. Next item in the mailbag is relating to the poly versus swingers topic that came up last week. And this is from N&A, your friendly neighborhood swinger couple. And they wrote, "Hi Minx, just wanted to write a quick email to let you know you have a new fan of your podcast. Although my wife and I don't consider ourselves polyamorous," and yes, you spelled that correctly, "we are a swinging couple from Chicago who've been in the swinging lifestyle for about 6 years. So there are a lot of crossover topics that do pertain to us. Both of us enjoy listening how other couples handle topics such as jealousy and being outed. We both have had bouts of jealousy early on, which was surprisingly easy to deal with, and there are always new things, people, situations that arise. I do have one question for you. Why does it seem that there is some disdain for us swingers among polys? Your show is the first one that hasn't called us those icky swingers. I find it funny that a lifestyle that asks to be accepted doesn't seem to accept us. I'm in no way saying that you have this view. I'm just trying to provide a topic of discussion that has bugged me to no end while learning about the poly lifestyle. I know we couldn't, nor would we want to be poly, but we have all the respect for the effort it takes to make it work. So that's why I'm upset every time I hear polys ripping on us. I know our lifestyle isn't for them, but that fact doesn't make it right to make fun or have disdain for us. We just want to be able to do our thing without feeling like we're being pointed at or are the brunt of the joke. Sorry about the downer question, but do know that you have a huge fan. I'm almost caught up with the show and will be looking forward to your new shows. Take care, N&A, your friendly neighborhood swinger couple. P.S. We both think you're extremely hot. Just had to stroke the minx." And I actually wrote them back and said, no, actually, this is an excellent question and a very good point, which is why that poly versus swinging is something that's come up on the show more than once, and why I decided to read Peppermint's, or a part of Peppermint's long paper on that he presented at a conference, because I thought it was a very fair, rational, and a really psychological look at how these two communities really are similar, how they are different, and why this attitude does exist. And I can't answer for anyone else. I can answer for myself and say that I know that when I first became poly, I alienated a lot of my monogamous friends by going sort of overboard with the poly enthusiasm and expressing a level of disdain for my monogamous friends. And I do apologize once again to the people that I was not so nice to when I first came out. And I think in my case, I think I tend to do the same thing with respect to swingers, that in my overzealousness of embracing the poly lifestyle, that sometimes if there are other lifestyles that don't have that same sort of belief system, values, whatever you want to call it, that sometimes, I personally can border on disdain and actually have outright disdain. Let's be honest here. And, but I've tried to question my beliefs and to do exactly what you say, that if a lifestyle is asking to be accepted, if I am asking to be accepted as a polyamorous person by my monogamous friends, by swingers, by the society at large, then you know what? I need to be fair. I need to accept the lifestyles that I don't agree with if I'm expecting them to accept me that they don't agree with. So since then, I've kind of chilled about monogamy. I'm like, hey, if it works for you, great, not a problem. And sort of the same thing with swingers, that if it works for you, great, not a problem. There's no reason to be all pissy and obnoxious and highfalutin about it. So that's sort of my 2 cents. But it is something that I struggle with. And I'll tell you in my case why, is that it takes me, in most cases, it takes me a very long time to have sex with someone that I don't know. It's on the average of several months. And it's because I have trust issues and all kinds of other stuff that makes it very difficult for me to have sex with somebody when I first met them. So I don't think I could ever be a swinger because of those particular issues that I had. I really need to, and so that's why that explains why swinging isn't right for me, but it doesn't explain why I feel on occasion the need to sort of turn up my nose at swingers and go, ew, gross. So that's something that I think we need to continue to discuss and that we need to continue to talk about, because you're absolutely right. If we want people to accept our lifestyle, we need to be tolerant and understanding of other people's lifestyles. So that being said, if there are any swingers out there in the audience that would be willing to come on the show and talk about your lifestyle, why you chose it, what's hard about it, what you like about it, why it's fulfilling for you, please do drop me a line, cunningminx@gmail.com. I would love to have you guys on the show. Phew, finally at the end of the mailbag. Next topic. Had a couple of emails from people over the last few weeks writing in and saying, hey, we want to attach a face to the name. What does the minx look like? Yeah, don't think I don't know what all you big perverts are after. But it's okay, because I'm an exhibitionist. If you really do just want a face as in a headshot to attach to the name, you can always go to www.livejournal.com/users/polyweekly. That's where the show notes section is, and I do have a headshot of the minx in a very thoughtful little pose. So if you really want a face, that's where you can go. If you're a big old freaking pervert and you want the naked pictures, well, I'm happy to say that Grey Dancers Gallery is back up. Yep. www.graydancer, that's GRAY dancer.com/gallery. And there are quite a few pictures of myself in shibari poses, and as well as Genevieve all hot, naked, and tied up from our various shibari performances and demonstrations and whatnot that we have done over the years. So for those pervs out there looking for the naked smut, that's where you'll find it. And speaking of smut, hey guys, last week when I asked about polyamory-friendly erotica and smut, I wasn't kidding. If anybody out there is a writer of erotica or smut and has stories, erotica, that you think are poly-friendly and don't mind my reading them on the air, with proper credit, of course, email those to me, cunningminx@gmail.com. I want to make this podcast deserving of the smut explicit title that it has. Finally, last but not least, you guys know I'm very excited about going to Ohio Leather Fest, and I am absolutely thrilled that Ms. Dossie Easton and Ms. Janet Hardy have agreed to do an interview for Polly Weekly. And immediately after that, I, of course, panicked because I realized that I haven't read The Ethical Slut in 3 years. I've never read the new Topping or Bottoming books, and I still haven't read Radical Ecstasy, so I feel completely unprepared for this interview. So I put it to you. Are there questions that you would ask the diva goddesses of the first polyamory primer? Is there anything that you would like to know from these women? Email me, cunningminx@gmail.com, and I will include as many questions as I can in my list of interview questions for Ms. Easton and Ms. Hardy this weekend. And finally, through all the emails that have been coming in over the last few weeks, I've been giving a lot of thought to what Polyamory Weekly actually is. And a lot of you know that when I first started, I've said that it really was just, hey, I like the sound of my own voice, thought I had something to say, wanted to just sort of throw out the conclusions that I had come to in my 3 years of being polyamorous. And I didn't really think much more about it. But with I feel a real community has been built over the airwaves, over the internet, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And as I've said before, this really has become a comment-driven show. It's become a listener-driven show. It really is a resource and a place where anyone in the lifestyle, or who's interested in the lifestyle, or just interested in talking about issues pertaining to the lifestyle, it's a place for us to come and share what we have experienced so far, to ask questions, and to simply share resources and stories and experiences. And as I started sort of generating all that in my head, I realized that I've kind of come up with a motto, or sort of a mission statement, or a philosophy, if you will, of what Polyamory Weekly is. And no, I'm not talking about the tagline. I'm talking about sort of the philosophy behind Polyamory Weekly. And I do fear that when I say this, yeah, I know I'm outing myself as a big fat geek. Because, well, those of you who are familiar with this particular sci-fi author will recognize the philosophy. And that philosophy is that shared joy is increased and shared pain is lessened. And I think that is exactly what I would like the purpose of Polyamory Weekly to be. I think that's what it's become, is this is a place to share your joy, to share your frubble, to share the wonderful moments and the rewards of the lifestyle. And as well as, guys, this is a place to share the pain. We've been doing a lot of that lately, and I just want to sort of make a statement and say, yeah, that's what Polyamory Weekly is for. This is a place to share your pain without being judged, without being criticized, and with hopefully, maybe we can't solve the pain. We might not be able to make it, specifically any easier for you, may not have any solutions. Goddess knows the Minx is not giving any advice. But in sharing your pain with other people in the community, hopefully we will be able to lessen it a little bit. And hopefully by sharing your joys, we'll be able to make that even greater and give hope to people who are going through the pain right now. So yeah, I'm going to end on that very sentimental note. And 2 points to anyone who knows which sci-fi author that particular philosophy is from. Who knows? Maybe he's listening. You never know. Anyway, we're going to wrap up for this week, and next week will be post-Ohio Leather Fest, let you know how that went. And again, email me, cunningminx@gmail.com, for questions, comments, any smut. Email that straight to me. And remember, guys, it is sometimes about the sex, but it's not always just about the sex. Thanks for listening.